Okay, so we've learnt about ceramics, we've learnt about polymers. The final material that we're going to learn about is something called composites. Okay, and when we're thinking about composites, I want to start by thinking about something that you've probably heard of called reinforced concrete and what that actually is. So imagine we've got a building, maybe an office block. That's what this is. This is a building. This is the ground here, and this is a building. These are the windows. Okay. Now, this is probably going to be made of concrete. All right. Now remember, concrete is good because it is strong. It doesn't react with water. It's got a high melting point. All those good things, but it's brittle. It breaks easily. Okay. So how can we change, or how can we add to the concrete in order to account for that one bad property? Okay, and what we do is we reinforce the concrete with metal. So reinforced concrete will have steel inside it. Okay, so imagine this here is a piece of steel. So that will be inside the concrete. All right, going down into the foundations like this. All right, if you've ever seen a building site, you might have seen big bits of metal, big bits of steel, and then they pour the concrete in around it. Okay, so the foundations will be concrete. All right, so this here, this is concrete, but they pour it around a steel frame. All right, so I put the steel in and I put the concrete in around it. And what that does is it means I still get the strength of the concrete, I still get the high melting point of the concrete, but now the brittleness is reduced because it's got steel inside of it, and steel is not brittle. Okay, so a composite is where we have two types of materials together. I'll say just in case, two or more types of material. All right, and that is what a composite is. Okay, so remember that we have our concrete, which is strong but brittle, and we have our steel, which is a very strong kind of metal, which is not brittle. All right, so you can see that the properties of the two materials in the composite complement each other. All right, you wouldn't want to use the same kind of material. You're not going to use steel on a different metal because you don't get any of the benefit of the different kind of material. All right, and there are a few types of composites that we can think about. So one more composite, because we've got reinforced concrete, so that can be our first kind of composite material. Our second one is something called carbon fiber reinforced plastic. All right, so a little bit complicated, but let's have a little think about what this means. So we've got two types of materials. We've got carbon fiber and we've got plastic. So we know that it's a composite because there are two different types of material. Okay, now carbon fiber are thin tubes of carbon. All right, and the plastic is a polymer, a synthetic polymer like the one we just learned about in the last video, and that acts like a glue. All right, so what we do is we have these thin tubes of carbon. So you can imagine these thin tubes of carbon, Okay, and they will be maybe in a pattern like this. There might be different kinds of patterns that you can use, and then we put the glue over it to hold it all together. Okay, and what we end up with is something that is very, very light, but very, very strong, which is fantastic because usually anything that's light is not very strong, or anything that's strong is not very light. Okay, so to be able to have both light and strong is fantastic. All right, so carbon fiber reinforced plastic, or CFRP for short, can be used in things like, it gets used a lot in sports equipment. Okay, so if you watch the Olympics, a lot of their bicycles will be made of carbon fiber reinforced plastic, maybe tennis rackets, that kind of thing, because they're really light, but they're really strong. But also, we use them in aerospace. So they might be used in airplanes. Because obviously, airplanes, in order to be able to fly, need to be light, but they also need to be very, very strong. All right, so they get some use in airplanes and that kind of thing. All right, so there we have 3 different types of materials: ceramics, polymers, and composites.